If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. All right, if you still want to talk, I'm going to ask you to take your conversations outside so we can get started. Enjoy the beautiful weather. All right. So, good afternoon. My name is Chris Lamont Brown. I'm the co-director for research and education here at NCEJN, and we're going to be doing, so one of the things that I'm proud about also about our co-director model is also the different spheres that we hold. So we have Dr. Vijay holding infrastructure and development, thinking about resources. How do we, as an organization and for those in our network, how do we resource and make sure that we have the infrastructure to be able to do reporting, all the things that we need, and get that money, also mama money right there. We have Dr. Rania Masri, who's thinking about organizing and policy. And these last few sessions that she's been running, you can really see how we're bringing people together for strategic thinking and bringing broad groups of people who may have pretty similar work, but maybe not be in the same space. Like, that's what we're trying to do, bring people together. With research and education, our role is to really think about how can we use resources in terms of data, all those things, to help strategic thinking for our campaigns. So our service of research is to be an aid to the organizing. And so we think about tools that we can use to help that. And for us, there's not a single environmental justice issue that we work on. Whatever you're working on is what we're working on. And so we want to have tools that are flexible enough that can be applied to any situation. And that's what myself and Dr. Danny Lynn Hunter here, and I'm going to actually have you stand up. Danny's tired because she's been dealing. The reason why I look refreshed is because I don't have to carry all the details in my brain. They go in Danny's brain. And Danny is the superhero that can hold all those things. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And Danny has been able to show, so I started doing community mapping when I first started this role 3 years ago. 4 years ago? I did my first community mapping session in Greenville. Don helped host. Greenville, North Carolina. Thank you. Greenville, North Carolina. Yes. It was co-hosted with Notre, Down East Coal Ash. And it was my first event that I hosted, and I was so amazed. One, because of the organizing that went into it. I didn't do that organizing. I got to watch Don and Bobby do the organizing and see the impact of being able to bring people together. I was a fresh science nerd, so I was ready to do my thing, but to bring people to see how grassroots organizing can be effective and to put these tools together was incredible. What we didn't have at that time, while we had the people, while we had the discussion, while we had maps and pieces to talk about what kinds of hazards were in people's areas, we didn't have the infrastructure to be able to quickly provide feedback of what happened. But we had people taking notes, but without quite the direction and structure. I didn't set that up. Danny took a look at my mess, and she cleaned it up, let me tell you. It took about 6 months from when we had that event to be able to digitize all the notes, put them up in a format that can be shared back with folks. Now, thanks to Dr. Danny Lynn Hunter, that happens in 15 minutes, from when people are sharing their experiences to getting that feedback. And so we've learned tools along the way. And part of that was suggestions from Stephen Moisey, who's like, oh, you should try this thing. And also gave us let us use his subscription to ArcGIS so we could try it out. So we were able to work in community and figure things out along the way. And so I'm really proud to be able to share back with you a very common practice of participatory mapping, but a unique tool, and that's kind of the infrastructure that Danny has built to make it effective and really versatile to fit so many situations. So I'm going to share with you a few ways that we've used participatory mapping, and great. I'm not even going to have to use my clicker because I didn't even introduce y'all, Corey Curtis. Is that okay? Yeah? And Corey's been an intern with us for about a year and has now been able to move on to do not just, helping out with his own projects, but was able to do volunteer coordination, have been able to run several mapping sessions, and this is his first mapping session that he's gonna run on his own. So y'all, we're filling in shoes here. You're pouring. Okay. So what can we learn, or how can participatory mapping and science advance the community's goals? We share so much when we come together, right? You can feel the energy when we're bringing people together. There's a creative energy that goes on. We feel the spirit. There's so many other things than just what you can get from a Zoom call. So one of the things that we try to do is keep those community events alive, because that's what sparks creative energy. And we get people to be able to talk about whatever it is the issue that they wish to discuss. And what we do is we give it structure. And we see that can help any sort of strategy being built. So we see that as a good foundation, and that can be used for additional research, that can be used for advocacy campaigns. There's lots of things that we can use it for, and I'll give a few examples of that. But to start things off, in structuring our participatory mapping when we go to a particular community, we want to think about what are the community's goals, and so what are the particular things that they're working on that they would like help with? How would mapping outcomes help accomplish those goals? And then how does the community suggest that we draft maps? Maps are not static. There's lots of views that you can have for a particular map, and we like to print them out beforehand. And I learned from trial and error, and by trial and error, I mean Bobby being mad at me when he was looking at a map of Goldsboro and being like, but that's not right. You don't have our people can't see their residents from here, and these other there has to be this back and forth to get the right image and perspective so that community can recognize their place and to be able to talk about it. I'm gonna give a few examples of some participatory mapping events that we've held to give an idea of the versatility of things. So first, we worked with concerned citizens of the West Baden community. I'm not sure, is Richard and Angie still here? No, okay. You heard from them yesterday, but they've been working on their issue of remediating the Alcoa smelting facility. We did participatory mapping with REACH. I know that they left, all right, but we still have Maddie and a few folks that were able to help out. Their goal was to better understand the locations of unregulated industries in their facilities and connect that to community science deployment that they would have. And then we also did use mapping for the people's hearing that we had in June. And that was a really different goal. We were trying to be able to document all the public testimony that people were giving across the state and being able to put all of those issues together to organize and have suggested policy changes with all of people's testimony stacked up. So our second piece for building out our mapping is thinking about what should we document at each of these events. You can document, that can be helpful because you want to understand what information to report out. I told you that with Danny's help, we can now give feedback in 15 minutes, but that means thinking ahead of what's actually the important message or what does community want to know about at the end. we could put together graphs and draft templates prior and fill in the data as it comes in, but we need to do all of that work beforehand to make sure that we are able to just have the right templates curated. Let's go to the next one. For our concerned citizens of West Baden, they're looking at within their neighborhood, they wanted to know and identify places where they suspected contamination in water and soil. As Richard talked about yesterday, they were workers of the Alcoa facility, and so they've been essentially whistleblowers. They know where the toxic waste has been stored and places where DEQ was not regulating. And so we went through and mapped locations, and they were able to identify other sources that were not known by DEQ. For REACH, they were wanting to know that those locations of like what's in your backyard and understand the impact of all these different polluting facilities that were there. And then finally, for the people's hearing, we were trying to document a very wide range of categories, about 60, to represent the concerns of residents of North Carolina that came through. I think we had about 85 people give testimonies during that day. So we wanted to be able to represent at the end of the day what people said. And also, most importantly, we want the data to be useful. So we want things to be simple enough so that people that can come to an event and do the thing that they do best, right? Which is organize, bring people together, and identify their observations, talk about their issues. And we want to make sure that we are documenting and making the data useful so they can keep advancing those pieces. But we want to make sure, how does the community want to use their maps and those data? What's the audience for those actions? That all changes on how we actually display not just that 15-minute piece, but what comes after. So for concerned citizens of West Baden, that meant to use some of their maps and resulting data to have conversations with DEQ about other sampling sites. With REACH, that meant establishing some sort of mapping or early warning system so that when residents understand or see that there's development coming, they can figure out what's going on. And for the people's hearing, that meant going to identifying policy changes when people were talking about their issues and suggested solutions coming from things. Okay. Whew. Danny was holding up the time's up sign, or she was about to flip it. I knew it, but I made it through. Okay, so essentially the bottom line is we can map, what we want to do is be able to map information. Any sort of issue that can be an asset, so for our mutual aid groups, that can be resources in different communities. Who has what? That can be hazards in terms of what industries are nearby. For disaster recovery, that can be what are evacuation routes that we know of, what are cooling centers, what are places that people gather already. We can map anything that we want. And again, the purpose of being able to map is that this can help have strategic conversations about how to build things forward. So again, that can be research or some other campaign. So at your tables, that is what you are going to demo today. So you have, at each of your tables, you have a note taker. Note takers, raise your hand. Great, and give it up for them. Danny and Corey trained them on how to do that note-taking, and y'all's job at your table is to talk about an issue that you have in your neck of the woods. So you can be as broad as you'd like. Let's see, do you want to? Yeah. I'm going to give it over to Corey because he's running the show. Go ahead. Yeah, give it up for Corey. This is his first time. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay, hey everyone. So yeah, we have these maps, same one that's up here at your tables. We would like y'all to talk about, like Chris said, either an issue, a hazard, something of that nature that you see in your community. And you all have 2 different sets of stickers at your table. There are a rainbow colored one and a silver colored one. We'd like you to use these silver colored stickers, put that on your map. I know they're pretty big, but it's as long as it's marking like over the general area of where y'all are from, of those places of concern. You can also map and have discussions about places of importance, where you spend a lot of time outside, a community resource that is really important, a warehouse, something that is important to y'all. We tried to have places that y'all are from represented on this map. If you don't see your city, try and, guess. The note takers will be recording a more like localized version of where that is. They're gonna ask you where you're putting your sticker down. If you're talking about like your house, you don't have to give them your home address. That's not the point of this. We are just kind of trying to map that particular area. Feel free to give the town or the street. But please work with your note takers, and please, when y'all are having these conversations, let's try and go one at a time so that we can make sure that we hear what each of us are saying. But yeah, so the colored stickers, again, for places of importance on your map, and please pay attention. I'll let y'all have conversations in a second. And then the silver ones for places of concern. Great. We're gonna have, what, about 20 minutes?
About 20 minutes, so think about who's sharing in their area, split that time up across your table, okay? Any questions? All right, go, thank you. Okay, volunteers, give me a thumbs down if you have not submitted at this point. One thumb down. One? Okay.
Can you hear my voice? Okay. We just recorded 97 total records in that 20 minutes.
Okay, so let me give you a 90.
Once you have submitted that final record, please disconnect from the Wi-Fi, turn it off so that we can generate the maps that y'all just created. Thank you.
Okay, now this is now where the magic happens. I'm gonna give you a little bit of like what's going on behind the scenes. So we've been using an ArcGIS program called Survey 123, and it's one that you could build, like the name suggests, a survey. And you could ask questions that are open-ended. You can ask questions about lots of things. You could design a survey in the way that you want. What we make sure to do is to have our note takers put things directly into that survey, hit submit, so every single dot on a map has all the information that you described when you talked about a place. Wait. Okay? So this has been the challenge, the logistical challenge of pairing the narrative that you're sharing about an observation with the data of, like, it's an exact place and time. So again, big shout out to Stephen Moisey, who let us know about this tool. It is the best. It is also super helpful because we started using it in places that don't have great Wi-Fi. Does that remind you of anything? And so right now, the Wi-Fi at Franklin Center has been working. Everybody was able to submit their data and use laptops. But we could also, if we have hotspot, if that works, we could use that. Or we can go fully analog if we know that Wi-Fi or data is not there, and we could just put things on computers and then upload them later when we have internet access. So we can be flexible given where we are. But because Wi-Fi was working, we have the speedy version, which is how Corey could say we have 97 collective observations right now. Because everything was going in and being uploaded into our system so we could map it all at once. So while Corey's doing the magic of putting together, adding the data into the templates that we made beforehand, I am gonna let you know one of the projects that we started because of again, that creative energy that kind of happens. We can get into solution mode when we're able to map out our issues and our assets. And that's a project that we started called, of course, named by, again, Dr. Danny Lynn Hunter, EI, oh no. And you'll see at your tables artwork by Corey Curtis himself. And can somebody tell me what the sticker says at your table? What the cluck? What the cluck? What the cluck? So EI, oh no is a project that we have developed because we were at a REACH meeting saying that, hey, one of the limitations is that these poultry concentrated animal feeding operations are coming in so quickly. And there are maps that have been made showing that the locations of these things. And I'll take one step back. This should just be provided by our government agencies. This information, the locations of that's pretty standard. And long story short, when people get to make their own rules and when they're in power, they make nonsense rules. And one of them is, we don't get to know all the locations of poultry concentrated animal feeding operations. To make, again, holding them accountable for any sort of pollution or hazard that they cause more challenging. So this project is designed to use aerial imagery to identify where these poultry CAFOs are. And it is a project that we do, oh yeah, advance my slides. Using a platform called Zooniverse. And what participants do, and these participants can be anyone, anywhere, but they get an aerial image of some place, and we train them on how to identify what a poultry CAFO looks like, what a poultry concentrated animal feeding operation looks like. And what's that? Oh yeah, go ahead. We can do it. We weren't sure if we would have internet to do it, so we took screenshots, but we can do a live demo because we got the internet, so let's try it out. Yeah, that's all right. Okay, so what we did was we've been working with folks at Johns Hopkins. Oh, wait, where's, okay, yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, but where's, okay, but where is oh, okay. Bonnie had to leave, but know that a lot of brilliance went into this was Bonnie. What we had to do was get, this is now what we have is 1,200 aerial images put into this platform. Right now it's just of Duplin County because we've been starting with this work with REACH. But what any participant would get is one of these random images of the area and ask the question, is there a CAFO in this image? And so we see, are there any buildings that look long, skinny, any kind of structure like that? I don't see in this one, so I'm gonna say no. And submit that. And then I get another image. Ooh, what do we think about this one? Is there a CAFO in here? Oh yeah, all right. So I'm gonna say yes. There's a, let's see, there I see a swine CAFO because I see 4 barns up there at the top. Ooh, I have a, and then I see, and a lagoon, and then I see one over there. Okay, yep, and I see just hog CAFOs in this one, so we're gonna draw it out and just mark it. And so Corey's doing a great job of using the little tool. Yes, I'm gonna do swine, and just mark it on the map. That's all I see. That's great. Okay. There we go. We identified all the things, and then we just get another image. So we can do this all day. It's pretty simple. We just do picture by picture, and one person can go through a few images. With this platform, we have the, Karen, help me out. How many people use the Zooniverse platform? I'm asking Dr. Karen Cooper in the back, who is a community science professional and knows all about this platform. There's millions of people that are on this all around the world, and they all participate in this thing, so that people can go through thousands and thousands of images in the span of weeks. And get consensus, right? Because each image is shown, it gets retired after a certain amount of time. So there has to be some level of consensus before an image is retired. That means that like a certain number of people have to agree and mark it the same way each time before it goes away. And so we get more and more information. And so we're able to use this tool. We can put as many images, we can put the entire state up there. And we're starting with one county, but we have that. And so this is the type of thing that's come because we started with a participatory mapping project that said, this is an issue, and we can come up with a solution once we are able to identify, hey, what's that issue? So once we have this, again, the need was, we do have maps of this, but they're too old. We would get a new one in 2 years. But when we're having people working on these maps at this speed, we could upload new images all the time. We just need to get the right data source, and we could do that on the span of hopefully months. And so I do have to also tag more of our collaborators, Karen being one of them. So folks at NC State, I've also been helping out. Stephen Moisey at ECU. And then Clean Air North Carolina has been really helping out with being able to identify and how to train and do all the categorization of these things. So collaborative effort, and of course I mentioned the folks at Hopkins. Did I miss anybody? And UNC Charlotte. And also, Corey's been working on lesson plans with collaborators from Wake Forest University, because it's really wonderful that we can use this platform that millions of people are already a part of, and anybody around the world can participate and do. But we really want folks in North Carolina to do this, because not everybody knows what's going on in their backyard, what's going on in Duplin County and Sampson County and Robeson. And we want to make sure that the students of each of these places that live in these areas are able to identify that too. So we are working to make those lesson plans.
Yeah, we've developed 4 lesson plans at this point that are in their draft stage with the newest science standards, aiming for like K through 12. We've been focusing on some for like middle to high school students. Participatory mapping is like part of one of the lesson plans that I developed, so I'm really excited about that personally. And we're also really excited about incorporating this Zooniverse project into another one of them. Oh, and also a disaster resilience, one that I'm also excited for. So we'll have more on that later. It's a little sneak peek in progress, but also the maps are ready whenever you're ready.
Okay, all right. So in my razzle-dazzle stalling, I gave Corey enough time to make a map. Let's see it.
So here is everything that y'all just mapped. The colors are a little bit different. The red is for places of concern. The blue is for places of importance. There's a lot of overlapping dots. So if I were to zoom in, which I guess actually I can go ahead and I can zoom in to show y'all there's a little bit more overlap in some of these areas.
And can you click on one of the, since you have it open?
Sure. So we can click on one of them. We can see what is being reported. And in this scenario, we were just mapping places of pride and importance because y'all only had 20 minutes to do it. But when we hold community mapping sessions together, typically we're getting a lot more details. We're mapping what is the concern, is there a specific health issue that's associated with that concern, and any other, and also getting a component that is a transcription of the story that you guys are sharing. So we could click on one of these points and we could get a much more detailed snapshot of what's going on in that very specific area that you are an expert on.
And what we've learned to get that kind of real-time information and get the essence of what everybody says, it takes a lot of note takers doing things simultaneously. So we'll have somebody, you had one note taker at your table. For these sessions, we'll have 6, and, 2 teams of 3 taking on the different pieces so that we make sure that we're, again, when people are able to share, conversations are oftentimes overlapping. We want to be able to make sure that we're getting the information correct. And so people are taking shifts, going back and forth, so that we're having somebody that's making sure that they get the exact location right. Somebody that's just listening to what's being said and typing out that narrative as they hear it. And then other people putting in information into the survey.
And also anonymizing that.
And also what?
Anonymizing that. We're not recording your first and last name if you're sharing this with us.
That's right. Yeah, somebody asked the question yesterday, how do we protect people in research? And so we do keep things anonymous. Oftentimes at our sessions, in addition to having name cards, we'll distribute a playing card. And so what we will do is say that the Ace of Clubs said this thing, and the Jack of Hearts said this, rather than actual person. And we don't actually record who the identity is of those people. The community does have that, so they can follow up if needed, but we keep that information separate and we don't hold it. That's a good question, and yeah, I'll repeat it. And you asked if there's a mobile app that people can access the data or snap that. Yes, if people can see a concern, take a picture of it, and have that sent in automatically. Yes, there is that possibility in terms of the system. We haven't used it in that way just because a lot of what we're focused on is not just like the whistleblowing aspect of like the observation, but also like bringing people together to talk about those things. What we find oftentimes is that people, when they're in a conversation, will remember oh, this is actually, I didn't think of this as a relevant thing, but now that you're saying this, I have something to share. So we have been doing more things in events, but with the infrastructure of the mapping system, that's absolutely something that could happen if somebody wanted that.
We also have here, this is just a simple graph. Since we were only really recording these 2 things, there's not much more interesting graphs that I can show you. But we recorded a whole lot more places of concern than pride. I know, I'm sure that a lot that's on everyone's minds right now, but we can show more detailed information about specific health issues or what kinds of things that everyone's recording.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We can show health impacts, anything that people talk about that is structured into the survey. Then we could put it out here into a map afterwards to talk about the summary of what happened. Okay. Do folks have questions? And if we have, yeah. And can somebody grab another mic? Danny's got 2 at the table. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah.
Quick question for the EIEI Know, the mapping tool. Is there a way to see, I know you had mentioned that it covers operations but also lagoons. Is there a way to see unmarked lagoons? Because I know sometimes community members, I'll talk with them and they'll say they have a lagoon that they smell or that is near where they live, but it's not marked. The company's name's not on it, so yeah. I'd be curious to know more.
Absolutely. So the data source of this is just, they're what's called tiles. So these are just random sections of aerial imagery. So they're not selected because they have a CAFO or because they have a farm on them. They're just selected because we've marked out an area, Duplin County in this case. And so all of the 1,200 images covers every stretch of Duplin County. And so the image that is shown may or may not have the thing, so whether it's known by our Department of Environmental Quality is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, good question.
In terms of mapping, what we're talking about so far are points. can we do areas as well? I'm interested if an area floods, I want to know what is the watershed that that particular lagoon is in, who's in danger of having their water contaminated, and I'm possibly even interested in overlapping different things, such as maybe a demographic or a language. If I need to go ask someone, is that an area where there's predominantly Spanish speaking, so a Spanish speaker should go to talk to people, for instance. So like those are, I don't know if we have those more advanced capabilities.
Yes, that's a great question, and yes, we do. So and that's a great question. So we were showing point data where we put one point on the map, but we can also do lines. So we've done that with biogas to understand if there's a biogas pipeline. And just as you asked, we can do that with areas. So we can draw a polygon, and so or other things like that to get an area of things. So yes, we can draw whatever shape and that we want, and that can be kind of structured for those needs. So yeah, as long as you can think about, hey, what's the type of information that I need to collect, it can be built in that way.
Is there a way to see how close in proximity to a community that these things are? Like, it's, like 100 feet from a house, or, from a community and that?
So, yes, that depends on who's in the room. For one, so we've been able to get a lot of that information from communities saying, this is within a couple hundred feet of my house, because I can smell it, or because I have this impact of it. And so that's one way, because neighbors of those facilities are sharing what's going on. And I think to pull back also from your question, we can layer other information from things. And so, Devin, you also talked about like kind of demographics and stuff like that. So we can take the points or the information that we collect, and we could layer on top of other data sources as well. So we could get demographics of an area. For example, our state and also the Department of Environmental Quality does have like a community mapping piece where they have general demographics of each census tract. And so we can overlay information if we want to know demographics, or overlay information about other hazards or known permits or other things like that. So we've done that. We used, after we did some mapping with REACH, we also were working with Southern Environmental Law Center, who was able to, they were getting biogas pipelines from, how are they getting that? From land records. Yes, the lawyers were using their library skills and taking in the land records and looking through those documents and able to identify where biogas pipelines were being built. And so then we were layering that on top of where people were talking about digesters or capped hog waste lagoons. That would be the waste structure for methane development.
Can you?
Hold on. Sorry. Danny's always first, I'm sorry.
So I also want to go back to Miss Anita's question about how far away things are from hazards. So this session was about community participatory mapping and using that as a tool. But I want to point out that the Zooniverse platform that we're using for EIEIO No is also a tool that we could use. So this concept of like uploading satellite imagery and like having people like draw things, I would guess, I'm not positive, but I would guess there's a way that we could like draw a line from a hazard to the nearest home and use like how big we know that image is, and like reverse calculate the number of pixels that line is to figure out distance. And so, like, these are all examples of tools that there's a lot of different uses and applications for. And so these, like, we had our research panel yesterday, like, these are the types of questions that can be converted into research that we can use to support your advocacy.
And that's our job, that you can actually use Dr. Danny Lynn Hunter's brain because she can come up, oh yeah, we could just do this thing, we could do that thing, right? So there are ways to get these things done. And I think, Courtney, did you have the next question?
I did. I'm trying to prioritize in my head which question I want to ask. I'll ask the question about the end products. So for the EIEIO project, what's the
Oh yeah.
final product? Is it a list of geolocations of the lagoons or whatever you're asking folks to identify?
Yes,
And are there other types of final products that you could produce?
thank you so much. So what is the final product? We have, one, we'd have locations of places that can be, I'm forgetting the name, but confirmed that they are actually there. And I forgot to add another partner there because I'm seeing Larry being able to, Larry's able to also fly planes to make sure that the locations that we've identified on our aerial map are actually active and actual poultry facilities. So one, we can have a map that's verified, at least a subset of those locations verified, which I think is helpful. The output of that would be on actually Clean Air North Carolina. They have a data dashboard, and we could upload it there. We could put on other things if people are other data dashboards as well to put that out for public information of where those locations are. The reason why I pause of what's the end product, I see so much potential also because we have so many questions. The locations are part of it, but what we really want to know is, where does the waste go? Where does poultry litter go? And how does that, where do those things actually go, right? And so we're trying to figure out, can we see those things from aerial imagery? Can we also tag those things? And so with this system, what we can do is when we have a question, we can build on other tasks for our participants to do online to help tag other things. So we're starting with the most basic question, but we can build on that as well. So, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yes, can we build on permitting information?
Yeah, that's a great question. Can we build on permitted information? Yes. So there's different strategies that we can take depending on what type of things that we're looking for. But if we have particular locations that we're looking for and want to know more about those particular spots, we can try to select the locations and use the tiles of just that thing. It depends on how we just get that data to upload. But yes, we can start with a permitted facility as well and get more information. So for example, that we're also looking at swine CAFO digesters, right? So those are permitted facilities. The hog waste lagoons are known for the most part, not all of them, maybe. But adding more information about, are they capped and covered to be able to do, to add in that piping infrastructure. We can, ask more questions if we could observe something from the air, right? Okay, I'm being told I have one here, and I'm gonna go to you, Belinda.
I'll go to the back. I'll start back.
Actually, you kind of answered one of my questions, was the ground truthing aspect. Some of these aerial images don't necessarily tell you what is there. These barns could be chickens, or they could be turkeys, or they could be neither. So, that's really kind of an important aspect to that. And there was another question in there somewhere, but I lasted 5 minutes and then it's gone. So the ground truthing aspect is pretty important.
It is.
So that we're not collecting data that is not necessarily true. Oh, I know the other one. And then I think what we talked about at this table a little bit was this whole issue of bird flu. This map can be extremely helpful in that regard as well too. If you're not familiar with that topic, we won't get into it today, but it's a concern. So this mapping thing is pretty important, and I was hoping that if I stalled long enough, my brain would find that other question, but it did not work. So I'll pass it on.
What? Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm gonna get lost. Let me start with the one piece, and Larry, you bring up a really important component. The grassroots observations is a really critical verification step for the process. Now, we can use, I talked about verification from the Zooniverse platform in terms of 9 different people saying the same thing about an image and then it retiring. So when it has the highest quality that we're gonna get from a participant, then we can put it into another verification category. So we can have people on the ground to also verify those things, or a subset of that. And this is where we get into the modeling, which is not my lane, but Stephen Moisey over at ECU is able to take on that role and that piece of being able to say, like, okay, we have these locations identified, and if we on the ground verify a subset of them, can we then apply a model to see how many are correct and go off of that and get a little bit better verification across the board? And so that's the short answer of that, but the longer answer is that yes, folks on the ground being able to say, confirm or deny if that is an active facility, what kind of facility it is, was that correct, is really important feedback that we actually have the opportunity to do collectively. And so we definitely want to incorporate that into it.
Thank you for the work that you've done so far on putting this together. My question has to do more with worried that communities will end up with 2 or 3 different tools and still be confused about being able to access information. Right now, under Governor Cooper's Executive Order 292, there was a committee formed to try to figure out how to create a database on a statewide site that communities could access. Are you having any conversations with them so that there is a common tool so that communities will not be confused and trying to go to 2 different tools that may have some information that's the same, some information that's different, and still have gaps in information?
That's such a good question, Sherry, and it's an ongoing conversation that we do need to have. For this piece, what we get is a data set and not a platform to display the overall information. So we need existing tools like the governor's EJ mapping tool and those other things to put that information on if they accept the data itself. So essentially what we would get is a layer on a map that we would love for any of these different tool hosts to put onto their piece. Wonderful. Let me tell you the stage that we are at for EIEIO No, for some context. We are in the beta version right now. So I told you we have like millions of people that can go on Zooniverse and do the thing. That's if we are a Zooniverse certified project. And that means that we go through their review process, and they have beta testers that will give us feedback on the design of our project and give us an opportunity to review, edit, and then put that out. And once we go through that piece, then it'll go out to everybody. And that's when people will actually start the categorization of those locations. So we're still a few stages away from being able to have a map across for the state of North Carolina, but I think we're making intentional steps to make sure that we have high quality data so that can meet the standard to represent on any sort of platform, including the one by the state.
So I'm going to make a pitch for a few other ideas that seem like they'd be really good for Zooniverse that impair the ability to seek justice and to get resources. And it's with difficult to access information about, to be able to map impaired waters under the official list, and then as communities are trying to get data to add waters to be impaired that have never been tested or, over decades not being monitored for reasons like in Duplin and Sampson, we had a project where we were trying to get data to put waters onto the impaired list. I think statewide EJ screening tools need to have that information as a layer, and we're trying to work in Maryland to get the same thing and finding out that they're like, oh, well, we have it, but we can't map it because it's stuck in paper records somewhere. So something like this project with Zooniverse would be great if there was a way to, like Bonnie did, extract the information and put it up for map. The other would be, it's tough to get a statewide granularity about access to public regulated water and sewer. You have to go to every municipal water utility and request it, and there's the biosecurity conversation and all that. So if you could do Zooniverse to get community by community, who's on private wells, septic systems, and that's like the Omega Wilson issue is another really important one. So that's my plug for that. But a third one related to the biogas, and I think this should be something that we elevate to get out, because the way that biogas is being sold and marketed on billboards in North Carolina is very different than it's appearing in communities. The idea is it's capping a lagoon to get rid of the malodor, right? And the USDA says, yes, it will remove the malodor if you cap it. But if you build a new lagoon to cap it and leave the old lagoon, our community is going to have the benefit of malodor reduction. And that can be seen from the air. And that's the first story I think you get out there to get the public on your side.
Now, that one we can do, and we've started that workflow too. So the series of questions and tasks that we demoed today was like, is there a CAFO? Is there a factory farm in this image? But we've also developed another series that's, can you see a lagoon? Is it capped or not? So is it covered to be able to have that digester piece? So we have that ready to go and can keep adding that on. And so that's the great part about the tool, is that we get ideas like this. We can, if we have the right data source all ready to go, we can add questions as soon as somebody has the idea without any additional fuss.
And I want to say something about the everything's trapped in paper records for what you're working on in Maryland. Zooniverse can actually, they have projects that are transcription projects. So if you FOIA those records.
What does FOIA mean?
Thank you. Freedom of Information Act. So if you request those public records, which you have access to through the Freedom of Information Act, you can upload scans of those records to Zooniverse. And these members of the public who are nerds like myself, who enjoy going online and helping scientists, they will type out and digitize what those records are, and you can ask questions that's just like, is there an impaired water or not, so that you you don't have to look through all the transcriptions, you can just filter for yes. And so you can use Zooniverse in a lot of different ways, not just for lines and polygons and points.
I have no idea how we're doing on time. Anybody?
Minutes.
We're tired? Okay. Well, we're going to take another question. Who needs a nap? Was that Peter? Okay. All right. Well, we'll slow it down a little. We have some breakouts where you can have some breaks, but we'll take. If there's one more question after Larry, we'll just do one more. But if that's it, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris. One of the things to think about. One of the only regulatory hooks we have for poultry is the storage of waste. Not so much the storage, but the application.
Yep.
Once you see a pile of poultry, they call it litter, we call it waste, in a field, there are 15 days from the time that pile gets placed until it has to be applied or moved. One of the things we tried to do with the river keepers was to try to track that. But as you can imagine, it gets rather intensive as far as time goes.
Yes.
If we had community members who say, I've got this pile in my field, and this is the first day, photograph it, the date, come back 15 days later, if it's still there, contact us again, okay? The only problem with that is that we turn that into the state, but now the state has another 15 days to check it out. But it is one kind of small regulatory hook that we have, which would indicate the amount of violations of that rule. So it may be something to think about. It's be as simple as, here it is, and let's put it on the map. If it's gone after 15 days, we take it off the map.
Larry, I think that's something that we can use that structure of EIEIO know for, because if we have all of our known locations of poultry facilities, that can be something that can be added to known locations, right? So then we could, if we have the right data source for that subset of locations, then we can actually have an entire project dedicated to a new image, a new aerial image on a monthly basis or a 15-day basis or whatever we have, if we have the right data source. I'm putting that if on there because there's different.
I'm sorry, so with the poultry waste, it can be loaded into a semi-truck and transported 50 miles down the road and dumped in a field. So, you know, it's difficult to associate then which poultry facility that waste actually came from, because we can't get hauler records, which would show us what that was all about. So, like I said, it may not seem like a big opportunity, but it's one that just shows the lack of regulatory control over the poultry industry.
Yep. Okay. So we still need the grassroots identification of like where those piles are, and then once we have that, we can have like an aerial monitoring of it too, and keep that consistent place if they are applied to the same locations. Any other questions? We've got one more. Y'all are so patient.
So have y'all gotten any responses from maybe animal farmers themselves, and do you know anyone's opinion on this dispersal of information, like this freedom of information that you're pushing? Like, have they had any pushback or just any opinions on it?
I haven't been having those conversations, but I'm going to ask the white man in the back because I know he has.
So the short answer to that is we really don't, because they're under a lot of pressure if you're a grower from what they call the integrator to keep their mouth shut. We did have one instance where we had a facility down near, I forget where. Anyway, where the poultry operator started documenting how badly the integrator was lying to him, falsifying records, and he actually let a number of us on the facility at one point to take photos, video, and within a month his contract was gone. So they always have that to hold over the grower's head. If you speak up, if you say the wrong thing, you're done. And that's a pretty big thing to happen to somebody who's relying on that information. So we have not had, to my knowledge, a lot of growers who are willing to come forward, whether it's swine or poultry, either one. It is an effort that we're trying to work through. Craig Watts, if you know Craig Watts with SRAP, he's trying to deal with some farmers in the state to see if we can get access to more information. But so far, and kind of understandably, the growers do not want to say anything for fear of losing their contract.
All right. Well, we're going to pause here, and for the rest of our, how much time do we have?
We have 12 minutes.
We have 12 minutes. That's great, because we've addressed this question many times in this conversation, but how might I use this how might I use this in my community is the question that I'd like you to address in your tables. If you would like to address that question, reflect on it while going on a walk outside. If you want to stretch out, please feel free. But recognize that these are tools for you to use. And some of your questions you're asking, can I use it in this way? Can I use it in that way? So do that thinking of like, how can I use this thing? And if you have solid answers about that you want to move forward with, let us know. And we'll keep on our 12 minutes just so that we can have, so I'll give you all like break and discussion. You could decide how you want to use that time. But if you want to move forward on using the tool or to have it designed for your use, let me, Danny, or Corey know, okay? But thank you all so much.
And also not just the EIEIO No tools, community mapping as well as part of that conversation, just to make that clear. Thank you, guys.